The war in Iran isn't just biting you at the petrol pump, it's coming for your mortgage too. Every major bank in New Zealand has lifted their interest rates and agree there's more to come. The only question is, how high could interest rates go? To understand that, we first need to figure out how fast they could rise and what does that do to the cost of your mortgage. And then once we understand why the Reserve Bank even wants interest rates to go up, then we can finally unpack what this all means for New Zealand house prices over the next 30 years. Now, interest rates are going to rise faster than anyone thought just 3 months ago. Back then, the Reserve Bank and most other forecasters, they thought that interest rates would slowly crawl higher, with the official cash rate, the OCR, not reaching 3% until around 2029. Now, remember, the OCR is the Reserve Bank's interest rate, and when it goes up, typically mortgage interest rates follow. But the Reserve Bank just came out and tore up their old forecasts. Now they reckon they're going to take the OCR from 2.25% to 3% in just 9 months and get there by early 2027. That's less than a year away. And that really matters because if that happens, mortgage interest rates will go up too. And we can already see the turn happening. I mean, from 2023 to 2025, ANZ cut its 1-year rate all the way down from over 7% to a low of around 4.49%. But it's since climbed to just under 4.7% and is still heading up. So the interest rate cut cycle is over and the next move is going to be up. So how high could your mortgage rate actually go? Here's a simple rule of thumb. On average, the 1-year fixed interest rate is about 2.25% above the OCR. That's what it's averaged out over the last decade or so. So if the OCR is 2.25%, the 1-year rate would usually be around 4.5%. Now that's what we've just had. So push the OCR up to 3% and the 1-year rate could go to about 5.25%. Now, on a $500,000 mortgage, that would increase your mortgage payment by $53 a week, almost $3,000 a year. Now, let's say you're more conservative. You think that the OCR could hit, call it 3.5%. Just bang on 2.25% on top of that. That means the 1-year rate gets to about 5.75%. And I really like this because you can use that rule of thumb to be your own armchair economist and guesstimate where interest rates could go. And if you're finding this useful, do me a quick favor and hit the like button. That's how I know which videos to do more of. Subscribing and ringing the bell, that helps too. That way you'll be the first to hear about each new video. And if you do already subscribe, you might be wondering why the Reserve Bank wants interest rates to go up anyway. Well, the Reserve Bank is New Zealand's central bank and their one main job, the whole reason that they exist, is to keep the cost of living under control. Well, they want inflation, which is how fast the cost of living goes up, to stay between 1 and 3%, aiming for the midpoint of 2%. And they keep inflation there by changing their interest rate, the OCR. Now, the easiest way to understand the OCR is to think about the New Zealand economy like a car. So when the economy is really weak and facing headwinds, it's struggling to get up the hill. And for the last couple of years, the economy has been struggling. So to get us through, the Reserve Bank puts its foot down on the accelerator to get the country moving. And it does that by cutting interest rates. That way it's cheaper to borrow money to go buy a house or invest in your business, and it's less profitable to keep your money in the bank, so you go out and spend more. And the economy roars back to life and it gets us through that rough patch. But what happens when the economy has got a wind at its back, right? Well, that's like when the economy is going down the hill and picking up speed, and that's when the businesses have got lots of customers, so business owners feel like they can put up their prices and we get inflation, which is literally prices going up. Now, the Reserve Bank wants to slow that down. So they slam on the brakes, they push up the interest rates so that people stop borrowing to spend and they save their money instead. And when there's less demand, businesses stop putting their prices up so fast, and that's how interest rates bring inflation back down. Now, that's how it usually works, but if you've been in New Zealand over the last few years, you'll know that our economy, it ain't running that hot right now. So if the economy is still weak and it's struggling, why would the Reserve Bank put rates up at all? Inflation is still too high at 3.1%, and it's tipped to climb towards 4.3%. Now, that's not because the engine's running too hot. It's because the heat's coming from the fuel itself, the price of petrol. So because the Iranian war sent the price of oil skyrocketing, the cost of petrol is pushing up the cost of living, creating all that inflation. Now, the Reserve Bank sees that inflation is coming from overseas. It's not coming from the Kiwi economy going too fast. So they're not trying to slam on the brakes. Instead, they think that the OCR at 2.25% is still like they have their foot on the accelerator. So they're easing off the accelerator, lifting the OCR back towards 3%, which is more or less the neutral interest rate, where they're not trying to get the economy to speed up or slow down. But easing off the accelerator is not the same as slamming on the brakes. The car keeps going, they're just trying to take some of the pressure off, which is why interest rates probably won't run away on us like they did in 2022, when interest rates went up to 7.4%. In fact, New Zealand's biggest bank, ANZ, reckoned that the one-year interest rate will climb from around 4.7%, roughly where it is today, to about 5% and then sit there. So not 6%, not 7%, around 5% in holding. So what's different today compared to 3 or 4 years ago? Well, back in 2022, the economy was genuinely racing. So the Reserve Bank had to hit the brakes hard, taking the OCR from 0.25% up to 5.5%. And interest rates shot up from just over 2% to over 7%. That's not what's happening now. Today, they're easing off the accelerator, not braking hard, and this round is likely to be far less painful than back in 2022, and that's mainly for two reasons. One is this inflation isn't as sticky. It's mostly oil, and it's expected to fade. The second thing is, last time rates had been left too low for too long. The OCR was sitting right down at 0.25%, the lowest it's ever been, so the Reserve Bank had to overcorrect and hike those interest rates really, really hard. This time, they're starting at a higher base at 2.25%, so they simply don't need to go as high or as hard. But I've also got to be straight with you, because every prediction in this video rests on a couple of very big assumptions, which is that the Iranian war will eventually end and that the price of oil will get back to normal. But if the Strait of Hormuz, this narrow waterway that 20% of the world's oil goes through, if that stays shut and the price of oil keeps climbing, well, that'd mean inflation stays too high and the Reserve Bank may have to hike harder and faster than anyone's actually forecasting right now. So keep half an eye on the Middle East, because believe it or not, that's the thing most likely to decide what your mortgage costs next year. But knowing where rates could go, it's only half the story. What actually matters is how and when it hits you. And that depends when you last fixed your mortgage and for how long. Because when you take out a mortgage, you could lock in your interest rate for 6 months and often up to 5 years. And typically the longer you fix for, the higher your interest rate. So you pay for that certainty. But sometimes that certainty really pays off. I mean, if you fixed for 5 years back in 2021, you would have locked in one of the lowest interest rates in history, and you'd be about to roll off onto something a little bit higher. That could sting you a little bit. But if you fixed for 3 years back in 2023, when rates were near their peak, you might actually roll off onto a lower interest rate than you're paying right now. So you might be happy even with interest rates going up a little bit. So if interest rates are going up, how long should you fix your mortgage for? Do you go for longer, pay a higher rate but get that certainty, or take the shorter term rate and have a cheaper mortgage for the next year or so? Well, mortgage brokers currently report that the most popular rate is the 2-year rate. But popular doesn't mean that it's right for you, which is why I made this interest rate calculator for you guys. You put in the 2 rates you're being offered, and it shows you what would need to happen for one to beat the other. So right now, the day that I'm recording this, the 1-year rate is about 4.65%. The 2-year rate is higher at about 5.19%. So at face value, the 1 year looks quite a lot cheaper. But if you fix for 1 year, in 12 months' time, you've got to choose another rate. And what if interest rates go up? And how high would interest rates need to go up to make locking in at that 2-year rate today the smarter move? Well, this calculator gives you the answer. The 1-year rate would have to get to 5.73%. So if the 1-year rate in a year's time is above 5.73%, Paying the higher 2-year rate today would be the better call. But if in a year's time the 1-year rate is below that 5.73%, then it'd make more sense to take the cheaper rate today. And this is where all of these forecasts that we've been talking about become really, really useful, because ANZ reckons the 1-year rate will be around 5% in 12 months' time. Well, that's well below 5.73%. So if ANZ's forecast plays out, the way to save on interest is to fix for 1 year. But of course, forecasts don't often play out. And of course, you might not care about getting the cheapest rate. You might be willing to pay for certainty. So punch your own rates into the calculator, decide how high you think rates could go, and it'll help you put some numbers around your decision. But if interest rates go up, what happens to house prices over the next 10, 20, even 30 years? Well, for most of the last 40 years, New Zealand house prices grew at around 6 to 7% a year on average, and basically doubled for the most part every 10 years. And a lot of commentators say that happened because interest rates kept falling. So property prices might not go up as fast in the future as they have in the past if interest rates don't keep falling, and it doesn't look like they will. So how quickly could house prices go up in the future? ANZ reckons around 4% a year on average. Tony Alexander, an independent economist, often says around 5%. And we'll all have our own thoughts about exactly how fast they'll go up. But this is where you need to know about the rule of 72. This is the simplest way to figure out how fast an asset will double in value. So you take 72, and if you divide it by how fast you think house prices will go up, that tells you how long it'll take for house values to double. So if house prices go up by 7% a year, then it takes them 10.3 years to double in value. If they go up by 5% a year, then 72 divided by 5, it'll take just over 14 years for them to double in value. If house prices go up by 4% every year, then it'll take around 18 years for them to double in value. So take a property at $800,000, roughly the national average, hold it for 18 years at 4% growth, and now it's worth $1.6 million. You've made it $800K. Now, if you put in a 20% deposit to buy that property, that works out to be about a 10.5% average return per year, because not only do you get a return on the money you invest, you also get a return on the money the bank puts in too. Again, this is just a simple rule of thumb that you can actually use when you're thinking about investing, so that when you hear all of these forecasts or are guessing how much the value of something could go up, you can quickly figure out what it actually means for you. But knowing where interest rates could go is one thing. You still need to understand where to actually invest, which is why I ranked every major city for property investment in New Zealand. And some of these rankings actually made people genuinely angry. So click the video on screen. I'll see you on there.